Okay, do we have sound? Good. Well, greetings. I'm Emmanuel Goldstein, editor of 2600, coordinator of the Hope Conferences, and attendee here at the 21st CCC conference, World Congress here in Berlin. I just got to say, this Congress rocks. This is amazing. The amount of speakers, the amount of activities going on around the clock. I just want to say you guys are a real inspiration to us back in the States. So thanks to you. On the topic of the States, let me just say right now, I'm sorry. But try to understand, there are a lot of people in the United States, and they're not all idiots. In fact, most of them, I would say, are not idiots. But there are some very powerful idiots in charge, and they're running roughshod right now. Very interesting times. And that's why we're needed more than ever, because we're the people that can focus on what's going on and let people know when the wool's being pulled over their eyes, let people know when their privacy is about to be destroyed, and come up with interesting alternatives, ways to defend ourselves. Interesting thing. Now, obviously we all know what happened during the election, and a very interesting panel just now about electronic voting, which, believe me, is that's going to lead to all kinds of issues in the future if they haven't already. But the election, basically, the people who didn't want Bush in office, they lost. They lost. I mean, I know there's all kinds of voting irregularities. I know there are all kinds of you know, things that were mysterious, votes that disappeared, polling places that weren't accessible. But the fact of the matter is, there are more of them than there are of us right now. And I think the reason for that is because the right wing is doing a very good job at issuing its propaganda, as opposed to the left wing, which spends most of its time fighting with itself. That's just the way it is. Obviously, that needs to change. But are you aware that the main reason that George W. Bush is going to serve 4 years in the White House is because of homophobia in the United States? I mean, that's really the reason. What Karl Rove did was basically help get all these anti-gay marriage initiatives on the ballot in various states. And all these people who were afraid of homosexuals turned up to vote against gay marriage because that was the biggest issue in their minds. And while they were at the polls, they said, hey, I'll vote for George W. Bush. If it were not for those initiatives, it's likely the election would have been a lot closer, if not tilted in the other direction. So it goes to show that shrewd campaign strategy is really all you need to turn the tide, and that's what's happened in the United States. I think most people realize that we're on a road downhill, you know, that's leading to very bad places. I think most people realize that Iraq is a big mistake, and unfortunately, they were led astray yet again. It's going to be an interesting 4 years, though, and I'm kind of looking forward to it because there are going to be some interesting conflicts ahead. Now that leads into what we're talking about here tonight, or today rather, sorry, long night. And that is protesting in the new millennium. It's kind of a vague title, and I'll try to clarify it a little better. Basically, protesting is taking on a whole new meaning in the times that we find ourselves in now, with communications abilities, the internet, technology of all sorts. Basically, all the rules have changed. And if you understand the technology, if you know how to use certain things, you have a tremendous advantage. I mean, people are left behind if they don't know how to make a telephone call, if they don't know how to communicate over the internet. And by the same token, people who do know these things are left behind if they don't attach it to the rest of the world, if they just insulate themselves in their little communities and talk on IRC to each other and you know, play Dungeons and Dragons and things like that, and they never see the bigger picture of the whole world descending into a shitstorm, you know, they lose too. And as a result, we all lose. So basically, what this conference has done and what we've tried to do with the Hope conferences is tie the two together. Now, we get a lot of crap for this because people say, oh, the Hope conferences are too political, there's too much non-technical stuff. Well, you know, there's technical stuff and there's non-technical stuff, and then there's a combination of the two. And I think if you basically are paying attention, you'll see the importance of each. Now, this past summer, we had the 5th Hope Conference. It was our 5th conference, in fact. How many of you attended? All right. I know a lot of you are scared to come to the United States. We'll get to that. But you know, if you'd come this summer, you could have come without being fingerprinted. Yeah, you blew it. Now you got to be fingerprinted every time you enter the damn country. 10 years ago, we started with the first conference in 1994, and that was basically inspired by the Dutch conferences that had happened, HEU, Galactic Hacker Party, and we wanted to do something more than just a security conference, just a technical conference. We wanted to sort of talk about social issues as well, but have enough of interest to people that were purely in it for the technical knowledge. Well, of course, the world has changed in 10 years, and so has our program. We've gotten a lot more political, I guess, much to the chagrin of many people. Unfortunately, I don't see that as something that we can just simply avoid. We have to be political. It's very important to the whole process. 2000, I think, was the turning point. That was our 3rd conference, H2K. We became a lot more political then. That's when we had Jello Biafra as our keynote speaker. A lot of people were like, why in the world do you have Jello Biafra as your keynote speaker? The guy doesn't even own a computer. I think he answered that question very well during his talk, where he basically showed how all of us are at risk from various policies of the government and of governments throughout the world. But also in 2000, you know, we were getting sued. We were getting sued by the Motion Picture Association of America. And Kevin Mitnick was still in prison. Actually, Kevin Mitnick had just gotten out of prison in 2000, but he had been in prison for a number of years. And we had to take to the streets. We had to hold up signs outside courthouses and protest in various ways for the first time in the hacker community that I was aware of. And that kind of ability, that kind of knowledge is something that is vital if you want to affect any kind of change. And in 2000, it certainly seemed as if change was necessary. Being sued by the MPAA for simply having computer code on our website, having somebody locked up in prison without charges that anybody really understood. And what you've seen over the past few years, you've seen kind of an evolution of activism coupled with technical ability. You've seen the Free Dimitri movement. You've seen anti-RIAA protests in reaction to their clamping down on people trading music. You've seen anti-RFID. You know, there's all kinds of issues that affect us. And it's vitally important that we identify those issues and we try to tell other people about them. A lot of what activism is reaching out to people who have no clue as to what is going on out there, either technically or socially. And I think we're in a very unique position to do that. We understand certain things, but we have to be able to explain those certain things to people so that they get it too. And I find the vast majority of people do get it once you explain it to them. They see the threat of not being allowed to view a DVD in a different region, or not being allowed to copy music that you already own, or having somebody sent to prison because he looked at a file. You know, most people get it. Most people understand it. However, if they just watch Fox News and CNN and nothing else, they're going to get their version. And unfortunately, the way things are in the States right now, there's a monopoly of media. What we have to understand is, look around you in this place, you'll see technology is in our hands. All right, we are able to build devices, we're able to play with technology, we're able to tweak technology. How many of you have gotten that RFID gizmo that can detect an RFID detector if you walk past it in a store or something like that? That thing is really cool, all right? RFID detectors are going to be all around us, all right, tracking what it is that we buy as we walk past certain sensors in airports. You're going to be getting all kinds of technical devices that are used against your privacy and to see what you're up to. And it's very important to have knowledge of that. Other things that I've seen at the conference here, compromising Bluetooth. I mean, that's fascinating. People need to know this. You know, you can walk around with your cell phone thinking that you're secure and not realize all that you're broadcasting to the world. Believe me, the government realizes this, all right, and they're making use of it. They're having a fun time monitoring the people they want to monitor, and they certainly don't want that knowledge getting out. Lockpicking, all right. How many of you saw the lockpicking panel last night? It's amazing. It's amazing what you can do if you have the mindset to get into something, to figure it out. Despite all the people telling you that it's impossible to break security, it's always possible to break security, and that's one of the reasons that I've always been interested in the hacker world, because that's what it's all about, is showing that the people who say you can't do something are almost always wrong. Now, this is our 20th year of 2600, which is unbelievable to me. 20 years ago, we started as a 3-sheet piece of paper Xeroxed in somebody else's office late at night and mailed out. And we were worried if we were going to get arrested just for doing that. Obviously, not yet, but that day could still come. We've covered all kinds of issues over the past 20 years, and we've spread out throughout the world. And we've seen the growth of a lot of other voices as well. And it's a positive thing. We've started doing radio in various places. We have a radio show on one of the most powerful radio stations in the tri-state area, WBAI. How many of you listen? Great. It blows my mind when I come over here to Europe and someone tells me they listen to the radio show. When we started doing it back in 1988, there wasn't such a technology where you could listen to the radio in a different city, let alone a different country, unless you made a cassette and sent it to somebody. But now, you know, we do radio and people all over the world call in, and if something happens someplace, we can actually get somebody to let us know what's really going on. And that's a big threat. That's a big threat to people who want you to see it from their point of view only. And that's part of the power of, as Jello says, becoming the media. We've kind of hacked the media over the past 20 years, putting out a magazine, getting on the radio, and all of you have hacked the media in a way too by just manipulating the net, however you wish to have your voices be heard. Basically, what we have to realize, though, is that there are always going to be people out there that want this not to happen. And those people are always working against anything that we accomplish as far as freedom of speech, as far as spreading information and learning and developing. That's what all the laws are about. That's what all the crackdowns are about. That's what all the fear is about. Back in the day of Nicolae Ceausescu in Romania, I remember everybody in the Western Hemisphere was shocked that they actually had a law that you had to go and register typewriters. You weren't allowed to have a typewriter unless you registered it. And that was pretty scary. And today, well, we're moving in that direction, except with computers. And it's something that is a lot more thorough than typewriters. How many of you know that whenever you print out something on a color laser printer, that there's a little microscopic registration code that can be used to track where it came from? It's scary. It's scary, some of the things that are being developed. And don't think for a second that there aren't people out there constantly trying to develop more ways of tracking the evil people that they consider to be the evil people, which undoubtedly are us. We have to be aware of that. We have to tell people about it, and we have to figure out ways to counter it. Now, those are things that may just affect us in some ways, but there are other things that affect everybody. Things like airport security. How many of you have been flagged going through airport security? This really be good. Wow. Not bad, not bad. I get flagged almost every time I go through airport security. And the latest thing in the United States right now, they actually mark your ticket if you're going to be flagged. This is brilliant. It goes to show you the level of knowledge at work here. They will print on your boarding pass that, yes, you've been flagged before you actually get searched. So if you're Osama bin Laden and you have all kinds of things you're going to bring on the airplane, you'll see, oh, I've been flagged today. I'm going to try it some other time. You know, not geniuses at work here. What you get is you get 4 large S's on the bottom of your boarding pass. And when the person that you hand your boarding pass to sees this, they say, okay, sir, step over here. We're going to remove your shoes. We're going to give you a real thorough searching. Look at all your luggage. Go through everything that you've brought on. And usually that's based on how you look. All right, now, I know to them I look like a freak, so I guess that's why I always get searched. But you know what? All I have to do is put on a suit and tie and cut my hair, and all of a sudden I'm not going to be searched anymore. I mean, that's not too hard to do, especially if you want to cause some real mayhem. You know, and that's the level of mentality that we're dealing with here, where we're judging people based on their looks and saying, well, that person's a threat. Not very high level, not very high level at all. It's up to us, as people with a degree of technical knowledge, technical ability, to see this, to report on this, to share the information. And that's what we've been doing through Off the Hook, through the magazine, and through the conferences. A very recent example, one of our people was going through airport security and got 4 S's. And you know how you get a little mag stripe on the back of your ticket when you go through? Well, after being searched, he had about 10 minutes before he had to board the airplane, happened to have a mag stripe reader on him, and ducked into the bathroom and read the strip before he had to give it to the airline, and they destroyed it before you get on the airplane. And wouldn't you know, there's more data on there, which we now have. So we're going to share that data, figure out what it means, and learn about the system. It's kind of hard to do. You have to count on being flagged and also have a mag stripe reader on you in an airport. But, you know, those are the sacrifices you have to make, and hopefully we'll be able to spread information in ways like that. That's one way. There are many ways. There are many holes in the system, and sometimes our reporting the holes helps them to make a better system. Sometimes it hurts us because they make a better system and it's unfair. I personally believe everybody should go through the exact same treatment. I think Condoleezza Rice should be subjected to the same search I'm subjected to, you know. And I think once you do that, people become aware of how unfair the law is. When your grandmother is strip searched in an airline terminal, you know, maybe then you'll see this isn't right. This isn't the right way of dealing with things. There must be a better way, rather than just sit back and accept it. Now, airlines, that's not the only place where we're seeing insanity and crazy laws. In New York City, God, New York City is falling apart because of all the paranoia and fear over terrorism. We have buildings blocked off and streets closed and soldiers walking around with semi-automatic weapons. It's really bizarre. I mean, I see the same thing here in some places. Paris, for instance, I see soldiers walking around, and it's kind of, you know, it freaks you out a little bit. But in my own home city, that's where I feel I don't have to take it. That's where I feel I'm not going to stand for somebody telling me you're not allowed to take pictures of a building, you're not allowed to walk down this street. And I think, you know, I'm not going to challenge the laws in other countries because, well, there are other countries and I'm a guest there. But in my own country, I feel I have the obligation to do so. And that's why, even though I love this place, it's probably my favorite place on earth right now, and if I really have to run from the United States, I'll probably come right here. But that's why I'm staying in the United States and opting to fight and do everything I can and, you know, join with as many other people as I can to try and reverse some of the things that are going on. And there are tons of people over there who feel the same way, and that's why I feel it's a big mistake to write off the United States and say that we're hopeless, we're going downhill. Not true. Not true. There are a lot of really good, enlightened people there, but they don't feel empowered. They feel like they're not being listened to. And I know that can be changed. It can be changed with a few fairly minor actions and just a sense that people are listening. I can't tell you how good it makes me feel to know that people actually listen to what we say in that radio studio in New York or read what we print in the magazine. You know, it makes all the difference in the world. Now, some of the things that are going on in New York are really crazy. The latest thing they want to do now is ban photography in the subway system. Because they think that a terrorist could take pictures of subway trains and use that to plan a terrorist attack. You know, the logic is just unbelievable. So basically, you know, if you oppose that, then you're supporting terrorism. You know, that's the mentality at work here. And it's just unbelievable. Of course, a terrorist could take pictures of a train and then use that to plant the bomb, or he could, you know, draw pictures of a train, or he could have a photographic memory. There's all kinds of ways, or he could just, you know what, just run onto a train, plant the bomb, and either stay or go, depending on his religion. But what we're seeing, it's, you know, if it wasn't so sad, it would be funny. We had a case of an 11-year-old who in school decided that, well, basically said out loud that he hated American soldiers and he wished they would get killed in Iraq. 11-year-old. So what happens is parents get a visit from the government saying, have you ever taught your son anti-American values? You know, it's insane the things that are going on. Okay, you know, so what? What's he going to do? Is he going to start a local chapter of Hezbollah in his school? I don't think so. Okay, you know, we have a free country still. We're able to talk about various issues. Some of them might be anti-American issues, but that's what a free society is all about, and a lot of people seem to be forgetting that. We have all kinds of crazy regulations and rules in the post office now. You can't mail this is a great one. You can't mail a package from a post office if you just stick stamps on it. You have to go you have to wait online and have them print out something. That's so they can get a good look at your face and have you on a camera that's hidden in the back that you can see pretty easily. In case you decide to mail a bomb, they'll know what your face looked like. And of course, a good way around this is to simply find a postman on the street and hand them the package. It works. We have the regulation that you have to show valid ID to get into many places, such as airline terminals, train terminals, things like that. And one thing I saw, I was on my way to LA, and I saw this woman who they weren't letting in because her driver's license had expired. Now think about this for a second. She has a picture of herself on the license. She had other ID too, credit cards, things like that. But because she hadn't renewed her driver's license, I guess she didn't drive anymore, she was no longer considered a valid person. So she was trying to explain this to him. Look, you know, it's still me. The only difference here is that the date has changed. And I got mail from somebody who went through the exact same problem trying to register for an exam, where he had to show 2 forms of ID. One of them was expired, so they wouldn't let him in because he wasn't considered to be a valid person without that ID that had the proper date on it. No matter how much arguing he did, he could not convince these people to let him in, even though it was obviously a valid license, and he had other ID to back it up too. He needed 2 forms of ID. So he went across the street to one of these stores that basically sells ID to anybody who gives them money. They'll stick your face on a piece of laminated plastic and put whatever name you want there. He did that, came back, showed it to the guy. Okay, that's valid ID. That's the mentality at work here. No thought behind it. It's not just the United States, though. It's happening here too. I hear all kinds of complaints from my friends in Holland about how the country is going downhill. ISPs now have to keep all kinds of information that they never had to keep before. They have to track their users. Identity cards. How many of you live in a country that requires you to carry an identity card? Oh my God, that's unbelievable. Maybe you can help us with the project we're working on. American passports have this number on the bottom. This crazy number. It's got your name. It's got your passport number. Has a P in the front if it's a passport. Has an I in the front if it's an ID card. All countries seem to use the same system. We'd like to know more about it. We'd like to know where the database is stored that has all this information on it. If you look at your identity card, I'll bet that's the system that they use at the bottom of it. You understand the system, you can understand the potential problems that exist with it. You can understand what the real threats are. Now, of course, We have a big issue now in the United States where everybody who arrives, even from friendly countries like this one, has to be fingerprinted. And yeah, it sucks. It's really bad to have that kind of a thing happen. It's an invasion of privacy, and hopefully it won't last forever. Hopefully we'll be able to overturn this. We are trying to. And how many people here specifically will not visit the United States because of the fingerprinting? Let it be known that more than half the room raised their hands. Oh my God. That's a real problem. I think if that carries over to mainstream society, and tourism falls off to that level, maybe the United States will rethink this. But I also think a number of other countries will do the same thing. I think it's possible the European Union will start fingerprinting American citizens, and then maybe American citizens. Hey, I'm all for it. Like I said, everybody should be treated equally, all right? And American citizens should be treated no differently. So yeah, you know, if we're going to fingerprint you, you should fingerprint us. So either that happens or we get rid of this crazy system. I mean, how many of you really believe that they destroy the fingerprints? You know, they don't do that. Of course they don't do that. They'd be nuts. We had, yes, I do claim to. We had a situation, and I'm going to show you a film having to do with the gist of this talk. We had a situation in New York City, an occupation, if you will. It was called the Republican National Convention. And a lot of us were arrested for various reasons. I was one of the ones arrested. It's still unbelievable to me. And people who were put through the system were offered, after they were arrested, they were offered what's known as an ACD, adjournment in contemplation of dismissal. It's basically, this never happened if you stay out of trouble for 6 months. And this never happened to me means that after 6 months and you stay out of trouble, there's no record of it. Well, guess what? A few people found that they were not going to be offered ACDs because they had been offered ACDs years ago. What's wrong with that? If it's an ACD, it shouldn't exist, but it did, and they found it and they brought it up again, and they used that information to keep some people from getting that kind of treatment. And I think some people might have even been found guilty of crimes because they had previously accepted an ACD. Now, the Republican Convention was a very interesting use of technology in the streets of New York. And I think it shows why this was very different from 1968, the Democratic Convention in Chicago, where a lot of people wound up getting the shit kicked out of them by the Chicago cops. And it was a real turning point because I think that's when mainstream America started to wake up and see that maybe they weren't supporting the right side after all. And they saw this through the eyes of mainstream media. Now, we had another turning point in 2004, and that's when mainstream America began to realize that everybody could be the media, that everybody holding a camera or even a cell phone could record what was going on. And I think the police realized this as well, the authorities realized this, and that's probably one of the reasons you didn't see the kinds of overreactions in the streets that you saw back then, because there were so many witnesses that would not lie because they had video. And I was one of those witnesses, and that was my crime. In August of, actually it was August 31st of this year, there were all kinds of demonstrations going on throughout the city, and I wasn't participating in this. I was walking around with my video camera. I had my digital camera, and I had 2 cell phones, and I also had a Marantz tape recorder strapped around my neck with a big microphone. I was recording sound for 2 radio stations, video for indie media, and basically just trying to witness what was going on. Believe it or not, in the eyes of New York City, I'm not media, and I found that out that day. What happened basically was that I was standing in a park and I saw a band start playing music, and I gravitated over to start filming that band, see what was happening. The band started to march down the street and I followed them. Now, what we're going to see in this film is what transpired as I followed them. Basically, this band of people playing music, just, you know, a group of a dozen or so people, marching down the street slowly, calmly, they were herded into a side street known as 16th Street by the police and trapped by the police, where everybody was arrested, unless you could prove that you were part of the corporate media. And by that I mean people who were approved by the NYPD as accredited media, something that I could never get, no matter how many tape recorders I have strapped to my neck. And you'll notice at one point in the film they ask all the press, all the accredited press, to leave. Now, I don't know about you, but even if I am part of the corporate media, why would I leave when there's a story going on? Well, that's what they expect people to do, and anybody who doesn't leave must be a criminal. Now, while we're watching this film, I'd like you to look for two things. First, look for the guy with the briefcase who just got out of work and is completely baffled as to what's going on and got arrested as well. People basically, if they were on that street, they were a criminal. That's the orders the police got. Anybody on the street, you basically trap and arrest. It was insane. Also, I'd like you to look for all the policemen who were carrying cameras as well. Now, we had a lot of cameras. By we, I mean the people. I wasn't part of any demonstration. I was simply following. I have been part of demonstrations in the past, and my political views are no secret, but in this particular case, I was documenting, I was filming, and I was phoning in reports to WBAI and making a video which eventually wound up on the net and caused all kinds of consternation. Count the number of cameras that demonstrators are carrying. Look at all the people and see what they're doing. And this is the video that has been on the internet. However, this is the first time it's being shown in its original quality, so you might see some details that you're not able to see on the internet. Do we have it ready? Hopefully we do, and we can kill the lights as well. I didn't have time to title it, I'm sorry.
blocking the street, not the sidewalk. So if you walk on the sidewalk, you can get past it. If you can't get past them, I'm not quite sure what the logic behind that is. Sidewalk! That's the top of the main temple. Everybody should be having a good time. But when you look at these costumes, there's each other's
Okay. Unfortunately, that's where my battery died. Bad luck, but that was pretty much in real time. And there wasn't much that happened afterwards that you didn't already see, except for a long period of time standing in the street and being processed by what had to be the most inefficient system I think I've ever seen. As you can see, that was simply a small crowd of people walking down the street, some activists chanting, but no real threat to society, and a lot of innocent people caught up in their wake. Basically, what we spent the next couple of days, most of us, was being processed by people. I honestly don't understand how they get through a day with the understanding of technology that they have. We're talking about people who still are learning about computers, mostly using typewriters, that kind of thing, and typing with one finger. They took us to a big holding area known as Pier 57, where we were held for about 12 hours, and then to a place called the Tombs, which is where you go when you're part of the system. And they had a lot of trouble with every piece of equipment along the way. They were driving a New York City bus to bring us all over to the pier, and the guy couldn't figure out how to shift the bus. He hit a car at one point. He hit a parked car. He kept backing up in the street, and then when he finally got to the place, he somehow managed to get himself trapped inside the driver's seat and was trying frantically to get out away from all the evil prisoners. And then when they were transferring us, they wanted to make an announcement on the megaphone. They had this little megaphone, you know, like sometimes demonstrators have. And you know how these megaphones have a siren setting? He kept making the siren go off, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And finally, he just walked away and never made the announcement. So we didn't know what we were supposed to do then. And then there was the fingerprinting machine that we all had to go through. And this is part of what I think this whole thing was about, was basically getting people's fingerprints. Yeah, they'll drop all the cases. They'll say that it was a big waste of time and a mistake, but they'll have our fingerprints. And they may even say that they destroyed our fingerprints, but did Washington, D.C. destroy our fingerprints? You know, you never really know. It's part of the risk, part of the sacrifice that I guess we have to make when we're fighting these fights to maintain freedom of speech. Now, what I did was, as soon as I got out and started to get over the trauma, and believe me, it was traumatizing, even though I was with a lot of people who were very supportive, and thank God for the National Lawyers Guild, who was all over the place. You might have seen them in the green fluorescent hats. It still was a very traumatizing event, because through all their low-tech and inefficiency and stupidity, the brute force factor really does win in the end. And when they have you penned in like animals, when they don't feed you, when they basically make you feel, even though you know it's not true, that the rest of the world has forgotten about you, they start to win. And that is what happened, and it took many weeks for most of us to get over it. I couldn't look a police officer in the face for quite a while. And I still feel a lot of anger to this day, and believe me, what happened to me was nothing. But what wound up happening in the courts, the vast majority of these cases have either gone to ACD or been dropped. The police actually tried to contact me. You see, I have 2 names, and they saw the name that I used to post this on Indie Media, and they contacted me thinking that they hadn't arrested me, not bothering to look up my real name to realize that they had arrested me. And they said, we realize that you have this video, and we'd like to get a master copy of it to help us in our case. And of course, I just contacted my lawyer, and they never talked to me again, or tried to. They did use the video from the web, though. They downloaded it. They figured out how to do that, and they played that in the courtroom. And in the vast majority of cases, the judge looked at the video and said, okay, so what does this prove exactly? It shows that the demonstrators were peaceful and they complied with the orders to get on the sidewalk. What exactly are you trying to prove here? The prosecutors that they use for these cases, I think this was their first case. Just like in many of the police officers' cases, it was their first arrest. The whole thing was a big training exercise for law enforcement in New York City. And what wound up happening was my case was dismissed by the city. I think they realized that I had presented all this evidence on the web. And basically, I put pictures up, I put video, I had my digital camera. I was really kind of happy the way I was leaking information out of prison, because they didn't bother to search me until well into the process. I had 2 cellular phones, a digital camera. My video camera, which was useless now without the battery, was in a bag that they had checked somewhere. But I was still able to take videos inside prison, which I thought was kind of cool, with my digital camera, and make a couple of phone calls. It's a good test of how you stand up to these things. So I think they realized that, you know what, maybe this guy really is media. Let's not mess with him. They dropped the case. Mine was the only case I knew of where the city dropped the case. And what happened after that was I was kind of stunned, just sitting around the courtroom saying, what do I do now? I feel like there should be more. And I was asked to be a witness in a couple of other cases, and I actually wound up testifying in court to what was going on in the video. And it was interesting, too. They were asking me the most inane questions, the prosecution. When they realized that I was part of a hacker magazine, they started to ask me what hacking was all about, as if that has anything to do with this. They started to ask if I'd ever broken into a computer system. I mean, it has nothing to do with what I filmed in the first place. And the judge kept, this is the first time I think I ever saw a judge say objection sustained before the objection was made. That's how bad their testimony was. And then the judge didn't even realize that I had been arrested too, because the prosecution didn't bother to bring that up. And when he realized that the person filming all this, who was an accredited witness, had also been arrested, he just basically threw the whole case out at that point. And so one other person was able to have their case dropped. And I think that's what we have to do, those of us who are in these situations. We have to stick around, not just walk away when our case is over. Stick around, make sure everybody else gets through it okay. The support I saw in this was incredible. And the use of technology, I thought, was pretty impressive, too. We organized on the web with various lawyers and legal groups and things like that. And I think that made a big difference in a unified approach to fight these charges. And while some people were found guilty, some people who were, I guess, protesting as if that's a crime, the vast majority of people were not. And even those people who were found guilty, it wasn't even a crime, it was a violation, which means the equivalent of a parking ticket. What we've learned from this, we've learned that the way media is defined in New York City is completely unfair and arbitrary. We have a case pending against the New York City Indie Media Office, which 2600 has helped to found by donating office space, and which over the last few years, New York City Indie Media has really grown. They're almost self-sufficient now, and I think we've really made some big steps. They have been served with all kinds of subpoenas over the last few months, including one call for any information having to do with the World Economic Forum protest that took place a couple of years ago, including email and all kinds of logs. The Indie Media servers in England were seized by mysterious authorities. Have any of you heard about that? Basically, they were in the UK, and they hosted the main Indie Media site as well as sites here in Germany, France, and Andorra. Who knew there was Indie Media in Andorra? Right on. And basically, in the end, nobody knew who did it. They returned the servers. The UK denied any knowledge. We heard that it was the Italian authorities who were investigating some Swiss photos that had been put up on a site. And to this day, we don't know who it was who ordered the raid or what they got from it. But what they are increasingly trying to do is get logs from Indie Media and find out who's accessing these sites. What they don't understand is that Indie Media doesn't keep logs. So it's very hard to do that. So, in conclusion, basically, we've learned that they know that alternate media is out there. They know it's a threat to them, to the status quo. I don't think there's a government ever in history of the world who would not look upon the people in this space, as well as people of the independent media, as a big threat to them. And why? Because of our knowledge, because of our organization power, and because of our determination to be free. And that's really what it's all about. That's why you can't give up on the United States. Yes, we're having some trouble. We're having a little setback. We're having some pretty interesting developments. But we need people to challenge the system, to stand behind the people who are trying to fight it. The people in that video, the people online, the people who don't speak up as much. A lot of people are concerned. A lot of people are really afraid. But we know things, we're able to figure out things, we're able to develop things. And that's why I'm convinced that we're the right people in the right place at the right time to fight this fight. So hopefully we'll stick together. Hopefully we'll see you in New York City in 2006 for the next HOPE conference. Thank you very much. I know we're out of time. If anybody has any questions, I'll be out in the hallway so the next panel can get started. Thanks.